Lucas wiped his hands on his apron and tried to steady his breathing as the lunch rush finally slowed. The dining room, moments ago a chaotic swirl of clattering plates and overlapping conversations, now settled into a humming quiet. Sunlight from the wide front windows pulled across the tables, turning the used glasses into tiny prisms. Lucas leaned against a counter just long enough to stretch the stiffness from his back. His feet burned, an ache that never fully left anymore. Too many double shifts. Too many nights ending later than promised. Too many mornings starting before he felt ready to breathe again. In the back of his mind, the same thought circled, relentless and cold: rent is due tomorrow. And the number sitting in his checking account was almost insulting. He had run through every possible solution, picking up someone's shift, selling a few more things online, calling in a favor he swore he'd never ask for again. But the math didn't change. The numbers stayed stubborn, even as hope kept trying to stretch itself into something unrealistic. "Lucas," the host whispered, leaning over the podium as though sharing a secret. Her expression was twisted between sympathy and dread. "Table 7, it's him." Lucas didn't need a name. The tone said it all. But she gave it anyway. "Daniel Crest." Lucas almost groaned out loud. He barely managed to turn it into an exhale. Daniel Crest, the billionaire CEO whose face was in every business magazine, every philanthropy article, every financial documentary where he effortlessly talked about hard work while sitting in a leather chair that probably cost more than Lucas's monthly income. Crest was known for being a visionary, but among service workers, the legend was less flattering: demanding, impatient, allergic to anything less than perfection, and allergic to tipping even more. Lucas forced a smile, because that's what the job required. He rolled his shoulders back, quickened his steps, and made his way to table 7. Crest didn't look up when Lucas approached. The man sat alone, suit jacket folded beside him with the kind of careful precision that suggested someone else normally handled such details. He was typing rapidly on his phone, thumbs sharp and exact, eyes narrowed in concentration. "Good afternoon, sir," Lucas said, keeping his tone bright even though Crest would never notice the effort. "What can I start you with?" Crest didn't lift his gaze. "Water. No lemon." "Yes, sir." Lucas walked away, retrieving a chilled glass and filling it from the filtered dispenser. The order was simple. That never meant the interaction would be. When he returned and set the water on the table, Crest finally glanced up, only to inspect the glass, not the person offering it. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching for flaws invisible to normal people. Satisfied enough not to complain, he took a sip and resumed typing. "I'll give you a moment with the menu," Lucas offered. "Ready now," Crest said flatly. Lucas waited as the man scanned the menu with a deep sigh, like he was reviewing legal documents rather than lunch options. He changed his mind 3 times, settling eventually on a dish that required several modifications. No onions, extra dressing, temperature, exactly right, which meant something different every time a customer said it. Lucas noted everything down, nodding politely, masking the tiny pulse of anxiety that came from knowing that the kitchen hated modifications in the middle of a busy shift. The next 30 minutes unfolded with grim predictability. First came the complaint that the restaurant was too loud. Lucas apologized and offered to move Crest to a quieter table, an offer Crest declined with a dismissive wave, as though the noise itself was intentional. Sabotage. Then came a request for refills, followed quickly by critiques that the refills were too slow. Twice Crest altered his order after it had already been sent in. Lucas apologized again, polite, patient, swallowing every small frustration because he needed this job. Because he needed the money. Because single fathers didn't get the luxury of telling customers off, no matter how many times they deserved it. The food was delivered. Crest inspected it like a jeweler examining a diamond for imperfections. A tiny sigh of irritation escaped him. "Why isn't this piping hot?" he asked. "It just came from the kitchen, sir," Lucas said gently. "I can have them reheat." "No," Crest cut in. "Just bring me pepper." Lucas fetched the pepper. He returned. Crest glared at the water glass. "This has lemon." Lucas blinked at it, confused. The slice was microscopic, probably stuck to the rim of the glass from the dispenser. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll replace it immediately." He rushed to the back, dumped the water, scrubbed the glass as though removing a crime scene, and poured a new one. When he returned, Crest didn't say thank you. He didn't nod. He didn't acknowledge Lucas at all. He simply reached for the glass and continued eating silently. Lucas walked away, breathing slowly, evenly, pushing down the exhaustion trying to pull him under. He thought briefly of his 7-year-old son, Matteo, and Matteo's bright smile this morning as he held up the drawing he'd made, 2 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun. "Dad, it's us," he had said. "We're winning." Lucas didn't feel like he was winning. But he'd kissed his kid's forehead and said, "Always." He carried that memory like a warm coal in his chest now, trying to keep his patience alive. Crest finished his meal without another word. He stood abruptly, grabbed his jacket, and walked toward the door. He didn't say goodbye, didn't ask for the check, he'd already paid at the counter without a glance in Lucas's direction. The door chimed as he left. Lucas approached the table with a heaviness he couldn't quite shake. There it was, a single dollar bill, no coins, no additional bills hidden beneath. Just $1, placed neatly at the edge of the plate, as if Crest truly believed he was being generous. Lucas let out a breath that shook at the edges. He wasn't angry, anger took energy he didn't have anymore. He was just tired, tired of being invisible, tired of being undervalued, tired of feeling like the world rewarded cruelty and punished kindness. He stacked the dishes, trying to ignore the sting behind his eyes. It was just $1. One more reminder of how far away he was from steady ground. He reached for the plate. And paused. Something was tucked beneath it. He saw the corner of a small folded card, cream-colored, thicker than a receipt. That wasn't standard. Customers didn't leave notes. Not usually. Curiosity, mild and reluctant, nudged through his exhaustion. Lucas set the dishes down and carefully lifted the plate, revealing the full card. It wasn't addressed. No name, no logo, just a card. And suddenly Lucas's heart beat louder in his ears, as if the world had shifted, just slightly, without warning. Lucas held the card between his fingers for a moment, unsure whether he wanted to read it right away or tuck it into his pocket and pretend it didn't exist. After the $1 tip, after the entire exhausting interaction, part of him expected the note to be some sort of complaint, something cruel, maybe, or condescending. Billionaires weren't known for subtle kindness. At least, not the ones who lectured their employees about gratitude while living in penthouses above the clouds. Still, something about the weight of the card made him pause. It was thicker than a regular business card, smoother, almost intentionally crafted. This wasn't something someone jotted down in a hurry. It felt deliberate. With a breath caught halfway between dread and curiosity, Lucas unfolded it. The handwriting inside was small but firm, someone used to signing papers that mattered. It wasn't typed, which itself was strange. Powerful people didn't usually take the time to write things. The ink had a slight indentation in the card, as though the writer had pressed hard, committing each word with certainty. If you're reading this, it means you stayed patient even when I gave you every reason not to. Lucas blinked, reading the words twice. His mind shuffled through the last hour, every complaint, every nitpick, every moment Crest had looked at him like he was barely human. Patience had been the only option. He couldn't afford anything else. He kept reading. I was evaluating you, not as a waiter, but as a candidate. My company funds apprenticeships for single parents who need a second chance. Your manager told me your story. Lucas froze. The card grew heavier in his hands, like it was suddenly made of metal instead of cardstock. His story. What story? Which part? That he was a single dad. That Matteo's mother had left when the baby wasn't even old enough to sit up. That Lucas had dropped out of community college to work full-time, thinking he'd return later but never managing to save enough. That he worked here because he couldn't find anything else that let him pick up his son from school without risking childcare he couldn't afford. Had his manager really shared all that? He couldn't imagine it. The manager was kind, sure, but managers were always careful. And Crest, why would a billionaire care about Lucas's life? He kept reading, the restaurant's quiet around him fading into a soft hum he no longer heard. Bring this card to the address on the back. You'll find a job interview waiting, starting salary $78,000. Lucas's breath caught. The air seemed to vanish from his lungs at once, replaced with something sharp and overwhelming. 78,000. More money than he had ever made in his life. More than he had ever dreamed of making, honestly. It was the kind of number that solved things, rent, childcare, car repairs, maybe even the medical bill he'd been ignoring for months. His heart thudded, once, twice, painfully loud. He had to read the line again. Starting salary $78,000. His throat tightened as disbelief tangled with relief that felt too large to swallow. The words blurred slightly, his vision prickling. It wasn't just the money. It was the word, starting. It implied growth, a future, a path. Something he didn't have right now, not really. His hand trembled as he turned the card over. The back contained a neatly printed address, a corporate tower downtown he'd only passed by while marveling at the cars in the valet line. There was a date, too. Tomorrow. His day off. If this was real, if this wasn't some cruel joke, his life could change in less than 24 hours. Then he noticed the final lines on the inside of the card. He had skipped them by accident in his shock. He brought the card back up to read them. The $1 tip is not an insult. It's a reminder of where I started. Lucas's eyebrows knit. A memory drifted faintly from the edges of something he'd heard before. Crest talking in an interview about growing up broke, bussing tables at a diner, saving every crumpled bill he earned. People said the story was exaggerated, maybe even fabricated. Lucas never paid it much attention. But now, holding this card, he wondered. Crest's signature was at the bottom, sharp, clean, unmistakably deliberate. For a full minute, Lucas didn't move. The kitchen bustled behind him. Coworkers laughed in the back hallway, a dishwasher clattered a stack of pans. The world kept going, but Lucas stood completely still. His mind raced through possibilities. What if this was some kind of test? Some publicity stunt? What if he showed up and security turned him away? What if Crest forgot he even wrote the note? Doubt pricked at him, but beneath it was something warm, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He swallowed hard, pressing the tip of his tongue against the back of his teeth to steady himself. He wasn't used to good news. His life had trained him to brace for disappointment. But the card sat in his hand, solid and real. He imagined Mateo, wide-eyed, excited, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Dad, what's that?" he'd ask. "It's a chance," Lucas would say. But that sounded too big. Too dramatic. Too much like a fairy tale. Still, he felt the possibility thrumming in his chest like a heartbeat. He touched the card again, smoothing its edges with his thumb as though afraid it might vanish. It still felt impossibly out of place among the dirty plates and half-finished drinks of table 7. A laugh escaped him, small, shaky, disbelieving. He sank into the booth seat for a moment, lowering his head into his hands, letting himself breathe. His pulse rumbled against his wrist. His nerves hummed. Relief, bright and soft, moved through him in a slow wave. He pictured rent notices torn in half. Past due bills marked as paid. His son's light-up sneakers being replaced before they wore out this time. Grocery store trips where he didn't have to calculate totals while standing in line. The card trembled again between his fingers, not from uncertainty but from the sheer magnitude of what it meant. This wasn't just a chance for a job. It was the first step out of survival mode, the first glimpse of something beyond constant scrambling. Lucas tucked the card safely into his apron pocket, securing it under the fabric as carefully as if he were placing a gem in a vault. He stood and finished clearing the table, but everything looked different now, clearer, brighter, like the restaurant lights had been turned up slightly. He glanced toward the door where Crest had left, wondering if the man had looked back, even once. Wondering if Crest had expected him to find the card quickly or much later. Wondering if Crest knew what this gesture meant. Lucas whispered a quiet, shaky, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Maybe Crest had already stepped into a black car. Maybe he was already halfway across the city. It didn't matter. The gratitude still felt right, necessary. He finished cleaning, walking with a steadiness he hadn't felt in a long time. Tomorrow, he wouldn't come in for his usual shift. Tomorrow, he would stand in a lobby of marble floors and glass walls, holding the card that had the power to redesign his entire life. Tomorrow, he'd take his first step toward a future that, for the first time in years, didn't feel out of reach.